Total War. One day a gem for RTS games, but lately stagnated because of poor releases and bad decision making by the game developers. If they want their massive old school classic Total War fans back, like in the days of Rome Total War and Medieval 2, they must look back to the last well-made Total War title, which is Rome 2, which by the way lost most of its excited fanbase early on, because of one of the worst releases in history of gaming. But with almost 5 years of support by the game developers, Rome 2 became arguably the best Total War game to this point, with still a very strong player base with on average 5,000 to 7,000 players. This is really impressive for a 9-year-old game. This actually equals the massively mainstream games like Among Us and Fall Guys, which are just a few years old, which is crazy to imagine. But what makes Rome 2 such a great game and an excellent example for future Total War games? Well, today I'll be showing you, but hopefully also some people that work for CA, the 10 most important things which makes Rome 2 such a great game. Now if you want to increase the chance of this video getting to the next Total War game developers, make sure to hit that like button. Alright, the first thing which I want to address is that Rome 2 has an active multiplayer community with always lobbies ready to join and a ton of them, which is very unique compared to other old Total War games, and even nearly comparable to the brand new Total War game Warhammer 3. The active community is kept alive because it's a great game first of all, which we will talk about more soon, but also because of all the loyal streamers and YouTubers, which are hosting tournaments, covering battle replays, and are teaching people everything they need to know. It's just a great climate for Total War fans. But the important question for the next Total War is, what makes the multiplayer scene so great? There are multiple things which play an important role. The first and most important one is the balancing of the game. Rome 2 is the most balanced Total War game out there, with the most popular Rome 2 rules 1-4 for sieges, which means 1 art, 2 pikes and 4 missiles max, and no artillery for land battles. But furthermore, there are no overpowered factions in the game, unless the faction Rome itself obviously, because the game is literally made about Rome. And even then, because there's such a great community, all the players that are really good at the game don't even play Rome itself, because there are factions with more potential, but are just a little bit harder to use. In Rome 2 you can also play one of the best sieges out of all titles. The multi-dimensional possibilities to attack a city makes it very enjoyable and very tactical. You can breach the walls with tortoises and different artillery pieces like the giant ballista. You can get on the walls with siege towers and ladders, but being able to break walls in multiple different ways is very important to have a better time at getting through the walls, and it will make siege battles more tactical because you now have multiple options to attack a city and breach through the walls, which is the least punishing option. In a game like Total War Troy, there's not even one option to break the walls, which completely ruins the sieges and makes it very one-dimensional. Attack the walls with siege towers and that's it. And then you can argue there was no artillery equipment in that time period to break the walls with. And that brings us to the next important note for the upcoming Total War, and that is the time period. I would say the Roman period until the medieval times is the best fit for Total War, because everyone knows something about the Romans, especially the knights in the medieval times, which makes it much easier to immerse yourself in the game and have more fun playing it. The combat animations already exist for this time period, and that brings us to the next very important feature, I repeat, very important feature that they must add in the next Total War, and that is combat animations. Melee units that fight in combat instead of units that would shoot, like in Napoleon Total War, would be much more enjoyable to look at. Just look at the animations of Rome 2, which is a 9-year-old game. They could copy these and add some more for truly good looking combat scenes, but for some reason the CA developers decided to remove this massive feature from the game for these animations, which look arcadey, unrealistic, and are unenjoyable to watch, and which really don't allow you to enjoy the cinematic close combat fighting. I really hope this will come back in the future Total War games. If they don't, not only the people that will play the games will feel less immersed, but also big YouTube channels like these depend a lot of times on the cinematic shots, which include close combat animations. But if you would see this in a video like in Total War Troy or Warhammer, that would really make it much less impressive, realistic and enjoyable to watch. But anyway, the other very important feature in Rome 2, which lacks in modern Total War games, is the individual HP of soldiers. Units in modern Total War games are based off a HP pool that will count for the whole unit instead of individual soldiers. This allows your unit to take a ton of damage without losing almost any individual soldiers. This makes the game much less realistic and much less enjoyable to play. Rome 2 does an excellent job with this. I really hope this will come back in future Total War games. But yeah, let's head over to the next important feature. The next important feature that got to be on point in the next Total War is the graphics. I'm not really worried about this one actually, but what I did realize in a couple last Total War games is that the units look a little bit cartoonish. I wonder if you guys think the same, but in Three Kingdoms there was already a little cartoonish vibe to it, but then I saw Total War Troy and the armor didn't look realistic at all for a semi-historical game. It looks like their units' armor are basically their clothes, and that made me worry a little bit. Same with Warhammer 3, so basically all the newer Total War games. But I still have hope for the more realistic armor, because I've seen a ton of improvements in the map graphics and the nature, etc. Especially in Total War Troy, this was really amazing. But the unfortunate thing is there are no seasons. There's no winter with snowy maps to play on, etc. This makes it less immersive. The one thing that I didn't really like about the Troy maps is that they were way too small. In a 1v1 there was barely space for all the units, but imagine playing a 2v2, a 3v3 or a 4v4 on such a map. That would be way too cramped. And the next thing is there were no open and flat maps, which is a must for every Total War game. For the competitive scene, but also for a regular player just to have a clear view of the battlefield, with not too much forest around. Makes it much more enjoyable to play. And this is something they must think of for their next Total War. The last extremely important thing which I need to address, which already a lot of other YouTubers talked about, is the single entity hero or general units. Don't get me wrong, we would love to see persons and personalities come alive that were important and famous in a certain time period, like they did in Three Kingdoms. But first of all, don't let them be a whole single unit. Just look back at Rome 2, make sure your general is in a general bodyguard unit, and make the general soldier obviously have more health, better stats, etc. But don't make him broken strong like they did in Three Kingdoms and Total War Troy. And if we also address the general abilities, yeah, your general can have abilities obviously, but make them realistic. So that means no Warhammer pendulum bullshit which can take out whole units, or like in Total War Troy where your general is unkillable for a certain amount of time. And let's not talk about Lubu of Three Kingdoms. He could literally take out whole armies. But what is the option for general abilities? You should think of why generals were important throughout the history. Let's say for Napoleon, a general would be important for reload time, formations, accuracy, all those kind of stuff. For Rome 2 it would be more a morale boost, fighting skill boost, and let's say a scare effect for the enemy. And last but not least, what I would like to see in the next Total War, which isn't in Rome 2 yet, is new multiplayer game modes like they introduced in Warhammer 3 with dominations. And I would like to see capture points being more significant. And CA, if you're listening, I got a pretty cool idea for the capture points. And that is first of all making them more punishing. And something else which they could implement in the game with the new engine which I think they're making, is that soldiers in your unit can be visibly injured. And that if you bring the unit with injured soldiers to one of the capture points, then that the individual HP of soldiers would get restored by a so-called medic tent. Or make it so that once the attackers capture a capture point, they will get extra time to conquer the whole settlement. And make the game mode like Chivalry or Battlefield, that you can buy extra units throughout the whole siege, like in Dominations and Warhammer 3. And make it so that the attackers will have a massive advantage at the beginning of the battle in terms of funds, and that they can only gain more money, which equals more units throughout their attack once they capture a capture point. And if the attackers are too slow with capturing the first capture point, they will lose the battle. I'm curious about your guys' opinions on this. And don't forget to like and share the video, so that's more potential of reaching the CA developers. And comment what you think should be in the next Total War, and let them know what the audience really wants. If you're willing to support me, become a member or subscribe to the channel. I would definitely appreciate that. And if you're interested how melee attack versus melee defense actually really work with the formula, make sure to watch this video, and I will see you guys over there. Bye bye.